Hello and welcome back to Not the Same, a podcast that brings you true stories of real people sharing their personal testimonies of transformation. As always, I am your host, Rachel Heimberg. To my faithful followers, you may have realized that I have switched my publishing schedule from weekly to every other week. This enables me to maintain the quality of my content while still keeping up with life. I appreciate every listener and will continue doing my best to bring you the best. If you would like to reach out to me with a comment or a suggestion, please do so. The best way to do that is through the dedicated podcast email, notthesame.cfm@gmail.com. A number of people have done so already, and I always enjoy hearing from a listener. I also love finding out how an episode has spoken to you personally. In our last episode, I was able to sit down via video call with Michelle Brill, as she shared some truly emotional things, and most of all, her personal encounters with the love of God. Today, I have a very special guest. I say that often, but this time, I mean it. It's extra special. My parents have finally made the trek to visit us, and although being quite the world travelers, they have never been to South Africa before. So of course, I used that as a perfect opportunity to ask my father, Michael Stamper, to join me here and share his testimony. Since he's my dad, there's a lot I know about his life before salvation. However, I'm also positive that I will learn some new things today as well. He is currently pastoring in the Midwestern state of Illinois and has previously been both evangelist and missionary. I'm very excited to have him here, so without further ado, let's get started. First of all, thank you, Dad, for taking this time to talk to me.
Well, thank you, Rachel. I love you dearly, and I don't think I've ever done this, especially in front of my daughter.
No stress.
Yeah. Well, my parents met in odd kind of a way, I guess. My dad was in the service, stationed at March Air Force Base in Riverside, and my mom was going to Poly High School. My dad had accompanied a friend of his down to my mom's house, but it was originally to be my mom and this guy. So my dad was kind of his wingman, So they went to the house, and my dad and my mom, based on their story, saw each other and just started talking. And his buddy got mad and took off, left my dad stranded there talking to my mom, and they just hit it off. One thing led to another, but basically they eloped to New Mexico to get married. My grandmother was not real happy. She wanted my mom to finish high school. She wanted her to marry a little bit different. My dad was a farmer from Ohio, and my mom was raised in a very rich environment with a governess and maids, very professional. And my grandfather was a professor of mathematics, just all kinds of political connections. Anyway, so their lifestyles were as far divergent as possible. Anyway, they got married. My dad was in the service. My mom went to live with my grandmother in Ohio. And so I was born in a house in the backwoods of Ohio, Adams County, Ohio. So I grew up on a farm, not in a big city.
So real quick, just to clarify, when you said you were born in a house, you really were actually born in a house.
In a house.
On a living room rug.
On a living room rug. A doctor, it was about a 20-mile drive, and he made a house call.
I do remember being 5 years old and seeing this house, and we had to hike and hike and hike. Of course, as a child, I'm like, when are we ever going to get there?
Right.
But just to clarify for those listening that it was an actual house.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a hospital.
It was more of a cabin, one bedroom and an upstairs where we were at. Okay. So we grew up, no TV. We had bottled gas, cooking, and coal to heat with. And we had wood, actually, in a wood stove. I could give you the whole list, but that's where we grew up. I remember living in Ohio. We moved to Cincinnati, was 10 years old. Then I moved from the farm to this big, big city, eastern waterfront on the Ohio River.
Where did you start school?
Well, I didn't go to kindergarten. I started first grade in Wilmington, Ohio, but we were tenant farmers.
Do you mean traveling?
No,
Or
no,
what do you
no.
mean?
They rented the house for a part of a
okay.
dairy farm, they raised cows, and we had a dairy farm, and my dad worked the dairy farm, but we lived on the property.
Oh, okay.
We lived a little ways out, 2 or 3 miles outside of the city. First and second grade there. Then we moved into the city and went to third grade. So I went first, second, and third in Wilmington. My mom, for a short time, worked at Clinton Memorial Hospital. By fourth grade, we moved to Cincinnati, Ohio. They went to work for Standard Oil. There was a little gas station across the highway from where we lived. We lived in a tenement house, you might call it, in a lower class neighborhood, basically.
So that change from the farm to the city, I don't even know if I've ever asked you this before. Was that shocking for you?
Yeah. The shock was going from trees and forest and farm life. Because you're on a farm, there's not a lot of interaction with other kids. It was just me and my brother doing everything we did. We moved to a neighborhood. The family next door was a black family. Then the 2 doors down or 3 doors down, another white family, but kind of, lower economic level family. My friends were couple of these kids. I'm a farm kid, so I'm kind of naive. And I remember my dad gave me a dime, and I go just down a couple of blocks down the street to get some candy. This group of white kids were there, and they stuck out their hand and, "How you doing?" And I grabbed the hand. "Hi." And he held my hand. They beat me up and robbed me for my dime. And then they ran off. And so I was kind of a rude awakening on that. But we learned pretty quick, so it was Tim, Greg, my brother, and I, and a couple other kids. We were on the lower street. Those kids had come from the upper street. So even at that age, it was a little bit of a gang thing. But, we didn't even think about it. But we'd walk to school under the underpasses, met King the Bum. So it was a downtown school called Guilford with no grass. It was all cement. I mean, we're talking inner city school.
Was it fairly mixed?
Yeah, very, very much mixed. I don't remember too many Mexican kids, but it was black and white mixed. Did get into a couple fights there. I was a smart kid. Let's put it this way. Small for my age, but very smart. I had to have a tutor because the schooling just was not up to what I could do. I read 52 books in the fourth grade.
Wow.
And I sat in the back because I knew all the answers. So I went, after the regular school, I would go get a tutor from Switzerland for advanced studies, basically. They do things a little differently now, but at the time, that was the only way they can handle I guess you would call it as a gifted child. So being small for my age and socially awkward, let's put it the way, I said what I had to say, and it got me in some trouble.
So did that bring bullying?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was somewhat athletic as well.
Yeah.
But as a kid, you're not aware of all that. So that kind of made me, the athletic kids thought I was smart, and the smart kids thought I was, anyway, using these terms, it was kind of difficult to grab. I had pretty good friends, a couple of us. There was a lot of bullying. But, as a kid, it wasn't really talked about. So you just kind of endured it. Yeah. I tell my dad, tell my mom. So, well, you're just going to have to toughen up. And it wasn't really a social issued thing. Got to the fifth grade. This was an interesting thing because it's an all-white school. And I have inner city tendencies. And I'm in an all-white suburban university town.
So is that when you moved
from Cincinnati to Riverside, California? My dad got a job as a superintendent for a construction company that my grandfather owned.
So before the move, what was the home life like? Your parents got along? Did you guys ever go to church before California? You were back and forth a little bit. It seemed like they were trying to make something happen.
Yeah. So 5 years old. We're on the farm. I went to, the summer schools, where they had.
Yeah.
So we had a Quaker summer school. I got my first Bible. Actually, I was 4, 1956.
Okay.
I won the Bible because I had memorized the most Bible verses for the summer.
At 4 years old.
At 4 years old.
Wow.
So I have a little black New Testament with my name, 1956, as a date on that. And so that's when I first began to realize that God had something in my life because I didn't fully grasp what that meant. But my mom and dad recognized probably I was different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm 4, I'm memorizing all these scriptures and they're with me. And that's always been a quest. So we went to a Quaker church. My dad was raised in a Pentecostal type holiness
Okay.
with a camp meeting, that kind of atmosphere. My mom raised Catholic in a convent style. And then my grandmother was a licensed practitioner for the Church of Religious Science, which is like a mind science kind of thing. That was her mix.
Wow.
I went with her a couple times later in life to a Catholic church. So I always had a leaning towards those things and always had an interest.
Okay.
So as a kid growing up, I was always reading stuff about it and asking questions about it. So we get to Riverside, 5th grade, 6th grade, we started going occasionally to church.
And this was your grandparents'
My
church?
grandparents, my grandma took me to the Church of Religious Science. Then I also started going to this Catholic place. And then we had friends that were Jehovah's Witnesses. And so they gave me a couple of books and I read those. My brother went to a Billy Graham crusade, brought all kinds of literature home. So I read all of that. So I'm 10, 11, and 12 years old. I'm getting all of this input. And then I met a guy who was a Nichiren Shoshu Buddhist. What? And so he taught me to chant to the Gohanzen so I could build my karma.
So you're taking all this in. Obviously, you said you just absorbed everything. You read everything. You took it all in. Did it leave you confused or were you just hungry? Like, let me just get as much information in me as possible. Did you think, okay, there has to be truth in this? Was it deeper than that or not quite at that point?
Well, I knew there was truth out there, probably because my dad was saved. He, wasn't always living that way, but they were very moral people. Mm-hmm. And he taught me to tell the truth, all the basic, have a good work ethic, those kind of things. I mean, he was very adamant. He was kind of a harsh dad in the sense that when he punished you, you got punished. But he did not tolerate disrespect or lying, any of the basic stuff at all. And my mom, she being married really young, my dad was 19 years older than me, and my mom 18 years older than me. But my dad was raised in a family of 9 kids, 10 kids, actually. One of them was killed. He had some good basic training and all of that, and then the military. So when it came to the religious thing, they made sure we understood that there was a God. Okay. But they pretty well left it to me. But then my dad bought a set of encyclopedias, and I began to read those really early.
I confess I love reading encyclopedias as well.
Yeah. So I started reading that, and it was all factual. Yeah. I knew that it was just too complicated for it to be a chance issue. So I knew there was God. I was hungry looking for it. And then when I got the Bible, started reading at 5 years old, I never doubted that there was a God. I was trying to find it. Okay. The Catholic thing was a little bit too structured, I guess. Buddhist thing, too esoteric, too far out there in the deep side. But, I got to confess, I thought, well, if I can get God to move for me, it just seemed too distant, not enough rational thought in it. So I'm looking through all of these kind of things. And so my brother comes home. He's 12, so that means I'm around 13, 14. I'm going to this Catholic thing, and he brings home this Billy Graham literature, and I start reading that literature. I'm trying to figure all of that out. But again, I'm in all the heavy classes. So I'm going into junior high, still athletic, playing the sports, was on the track team, pole vaulting, those kind of things. But at the same time, I was, the honor roll. I made the honor roll just doing nothing, basically. All through high school, same thing, small for my age. There was quite a bit of bullying in high school. I didn't take it too well. I usually tried to fight back, but I was kind of small. Then I figured out that the jocks needed a brain to figure out their papers. So I began to have a business. Okay. Pretty soon I had a protection of some. So when one beat me up, the others beat them up because I was their meal ticket for some of their reports and that kind of thing.
So you know what I mean? Doing work for them, helping them out.
Yes.
For protection.
Yeah. Plus I had a job. Early, I realized the issue of money. So here I am, 11, 12 years old, moving to California. I started mowing lawns. I had a substitute paper route, and I started washing trucks on Saturday. So I'm knocking down probably $100, $120 a week. Wow. And so would have been in 64, 65. So my mom took me down to Security Bank, and I started a bank account. I started putting money away.
So as you get into high school, as you're getting into high school, you have this element of religion. There's a God. There's something there.
I even prayed too.
Did you? Yeah. Just on your own?
Yeah. Especially when I'm reading these books, figuring this out, I'm talking to God about it. I'm going, this is fantastic. There's life after death. How do I get that? Quite a bit of exposure. So God was real.
So let's talk a little bit about the other side of that is obviously you're human. What was your first foray into what you would consider sin in that sense?
Ooh.
And how old? You know, you didn't have that much time, but every teenager has time. Was there a point at which you found yourself getting into sin, we would say?
Yeah, obviously as a kid, you're always in some sort of trouble at times with disobedience to your parents and those kind of things. But I did not get into any, what I would call blatant sin issues because I was an athlete in high school. So I'm going to school, I'm working, I'm going to high school. I did go to a couple parties. The drugs wasn't an issue at that point, but trying the drinking thing. And I didn't really like it. I mean, I did get plastered a couple of times, but it wasn't until after I really graduated, and I graduated from high school with several scholarships available to me because my grandfather had political connections. I could have gone to any of the Ivy League schools. There was several scholarships.
Did you have any athletic scholarships as well as?
I didn't really push for those, but I was a swimmer and a water polo player. I did make the basketball team, but I quit because of swimming. I did make the wrestling team, but I quit because of water polo. And I thoroughly enjoyed athletics, but I didn't really push to work at that. It was more of a fun thing. You
didn't have any drive?
Yeah, it wasn't a drive to be professional. The natural thing for me was really intellectual.
Yeah.
So I started with the drinking thing, but I graduated from high school, and for some reason, somebody shared with me a pot.
Okay. After you graduated?
Just after I graduated. I remember one of the girls asked me to be her escort to the prom or something, which was totally shocking because when it came to girls, I don't know, how do you explain it?
Awkward.
Awkward. Yeah. So I was very awkward around girls. I liked girls, obviously, but I was very awkward around girls. But I had a job. I had a car. I was smart.
So girls liked you. You just
yes, and I didn't understand
what to do with it.
I didn't know what to do with it. That's a good way to put it. They liked me. I had no idea.
What high school girl doesn't like a smart jock with a car and a job?
Yeah. And so then I was going to go to college. But between that summer, I got introduced to drugs, marijuana. My brother got involved, and so I joined, but I had a job, so I made sure it didn't affect my job.
So you'd say that smoking pot
started, but then I saw the business opportunities.
Okay.
So I thought instead of buying it, why don't I start buying wholesale? So me and about 2 or 3 others began to buy kilos, and so that led to me getting involved with Benzedrine, which is like meth, but not quite what they're doing today. Uppers. So, that became a business, and I was still holding the job. It made a great place because I'd keep it in my trunk. Then I began selling at my job.
And this was at the restaurant?
Various restaurants, yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know that I knew it was wrong because I was ethical.
No, I get you.
In other words, I wasn't selling to kids and I wasn't pushing it. I was mostly providing a service for those who wanted it. You know what I mean? So that led to hash. And you've got to understand, that time of the country, 69 and 70, I graduated from 70 to 72, 73. There's that whole hippie movement going on and the Jesus movement going on. I heard about it and it was interesting. So there's that period of time where I just ruined my life, burned out my head, lost my scholarships.
You lost them because you didn't pursue them?
Yeah, because I didn't pursue them.
Because you thought, this is distraction, I guess.
Distraction, dealing drugs and smoking pot and working and hippie stuff. We were all, dropping out.
Who wants to go to college?
Yeah, no, I went to college too, but I didn't do good because I was always high.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't a good scene at that time.
Were you living at home still?
No. When I turned 18, my dad and my mom bought this place down in Riverside. Me and my brother moved down there. When I met your mom, that's where I was living. But anyway.
So you guys moved out?
First, we moved outside the city. There was a trailer my uncle owned. He wanted me to stay there. So we moved up there to live, me and my brother.
Okay. He's still in school then?
He was still in school, but he had a car. So
okay.
That gets kind of hazy there. You remember, I'm on drugs at that time. Smoking is kind of hazy. So we moved down to a cedar house, and it was there my second year By the time I'm 20,
So those, you would say 2 solid years.
Yeah.
Of doing drugs and selling drugs.
And having parties and girls and the whole routine. You know, all the stuff is rotten. I still was kind of awkward around girls, but they didn't care.
Now you've got drugs. So.
So there was all those things going on. I had numbers of girlfriends. And, you know, at that time, we didn't really consider right, wrong, all kind of issues, even though I knew.
Yeah.
But I had kind of denied all of that. You know what I mean? That really led it to the fact that my sister came by the house, knocked on the door. She had just gotten saved the week earlier.
And how old would she have been around?
Probably 17, maybe 18 barely, because I was 20, 21, somewhere right around there.
Okay.
Because we're 3 years between us, roughly. Something like that.
Okay.
She knocked on the door, and because she used to come by all the time and get high and all that kind of. But she said, Michael, you're going to go to hell. I go, what? She goes, yeah. And I knew. Yeah. There was no question. I go, you know, what happened? So she told me about Brent Baker, part of the Jesus movement guy with Lonnie Frisbee, those kind of guys. So he was preaching. So I went to a revival meeting at I think it was Assembly of God or Foursquare. I'm not sure what, but Brent was preaching. And I didn't get saved that night, but man, it made impact. A couple of nights of that revival, I thought, oh my gosh. So then she took me to Calvary Chapel, but it wasn't Calvary. It was a Bible study by Greg Laurie and Bob Probert. It was All Saints Episcopal Church. Reverend Guy Bellis had opened up the Sunday evening service because they didn't have Sunday evening to a group of hippies. So we're all 20, 21, 22, somewhere right around there. And this girl got up, the long-haired hippie, sang the song, pierced our heart. Greg got up and preached. And next thing I knew, I'm at the altar. And I got saved, gave my life to God. I had dropped some LSD before she came over. And I never got high.
Wow.
And I came out of that church with my sister, Roxanne. And I know this is weird, but I looked up and I saw a cross and knew I was going to preach this gospel from that moment.
Wow.
And from that very moment, I went home and began to clean up my life. I had one last party where I invited everybody. I mean, that house was packed with people. And I went from room to room preaching the gospel, telling them what happened to me. I mean, I had a big stakes poker game going on. There were people doing things in the bedroom and taking drugs and doing this. And I went, interrupted them all from room to room to room, told them about Jesus.
It was like your last hurrah.
Tell them this will be the last time. Jesus Christ is Lord. He's coming in my life. And I just laid the gospel out. I didn't know much about it. Yeah. But I laid the gospel out to them.
Question, those 2 years, do you think by the time your sister came and told you, would you say that you were already on a burnout? By the time she got there, like, I'm done, like a burnout.
Well, it was wasted. There was an incident, you know, this is just before it happened. I had this party and my mom and dad came and they walked into the kitchen and I'm smoking a joint. And he looks at me, him and my mom, come on, dear, we're leaving. We're not going to hang around with druggies. Oh, wow. Because I respected my dad. Yeah. I love my dad. And so those words, it wasn't very much long after that.
So it was kind of a wake-up call.
Very much a wake-up call because I looked at my life and all that God had given me at that time, but I didn't know, you know, but all of my talents, all of my abilities, you know.
You just felt...
My life was, I just was total waste and I wasn't going anywhere. I mean, you understand, you know, after all of that, I was kind of really foggy, really fuzzy. But from the moment I got saved, the moment God came on me, clarity came. It was like all of that was gone. Suddenly, my mind became filled. My brain kind of rearranged itself. And so right after that, I'm telling you, I had that party. And within that week, I was at Kmart looking for a Bible. Wow. And there were only two kinds of Bibles then. There was the Catholic Bible, which was the small little fat black one, which was easy to carry. And then the big Protestant Bible, which is the big white one that you put flowers and stuff in, you know?
Yeah, you leave it on your table.
Yeah. So I bought the little black one. Yeah. And this is the Jesus People movement. It's early on in America. So I get this Bible. I don't know the difference. So I'm reading through it, and I'm devouring it. And one of my drug buddies at the time comes in the house. He goes, "What are you doing?" I go, "Look, I got saved. I'm reading the Bible." He goes, "Oh, that's a Catholic Bible." Well, I didn't know he was a backslider. I didn't have a clue. I go, "Well, what's the difference?" He goes, "Well, let me show you." So he shows me Tobit and Bel and the Dragon and Maccabees and all these other Bible parts that are in there. So I open up, I start tearing those out. I go, "You need to show me."
I didn't even know there was a Catholic Bible either.
Yeah, so I'm tearing these pages out, and there's this pile of stuff. And another guy comes in, he goes, "Oh, what are you doing?" "We're going to hell."
Oh, he was a Catholic.
He just was believed enough that I'm destroying God's word.
Wow.
So this big fat Bible got down to about like that, but I made a cover for it. And that's what I used. I think a year later, they began opening Bible bookstores around.
So then did you join Calvary Chapel right away, or were you?
No, yeah, I started going to Calvary Chapel pretty much right away. I'm working as a cook at Denny's. I'm the morning cook, the lead cook. And I began witnessing to everybody. I mean, everybody. And my friend, Stoner.
Isn't his name really Steve?
Stephen.
Stephen, okay.
Yeah, Stephen. But I called him Stoner. That was his name.
Yeah.
I had Big John. I had Stephen. I had a Gypsy John. We all had weird names.
Yeah.
I was Captain Midnight.
Why?
Because I had a midnight pharmaceutical. So that's what they call me, Captain Midnight.
That's awesome.
Well, we were drug folks.
So were they shocked as well when you started witnessing?
Oh, absolutely. Are you kidding me? They were absolutely shocked. And
another question, did you find boldness in this? Because you said you were always kind of socially awkward, but then because you had the drugs and the business, did that change then? Or do you think being saved gave you the boldness?
Obviously as a business, you have to develop a little bit. I was cold.
Okay.
Harsh, rationally, logically a sinner. I didn't have much use for people. I thought they were stupid. That was my internal viewpoint.
Wow.
Because it was kind of a protective motion because people bully, so, it kind of drove me.
Yeah. Be control. You get the sense of control.
Yeah. So it kind of drove me.
Okay.
Then I got saved, and all I could think about was I need to tell people about Jesus. I still struggle even now socially. I'm not your go around the party and talk to everybody, that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's still an awkward thing, but I love to witness to people.
Yeah.
I love outreach. I love going door to door, that kind of a thing. I don't have a problem doing that, but in a social setting with a group.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For sure. So that boldness and that compelling came strictly because you have the answer and people need to know.
I got saved radically, and I knew that God was real. But I also knew there was something sort of missing. Now, I got to tell this part of the story because you got to understand there's a transition period. This before I met your mom.
Okay.
So I got saved, and I'm working for a finance company. I quit working in the kitchen.
Okay.
Started working for a finance company because I was trying to push myself beyond something else. And I was an assistant manager, and I was in charge of collections. So I would witness to people I go to collect from. I go, "Look, let's pray. Why don't you just give me $5, $10? I can take you off the books. And then when I come back next week and give a little bit more, it'll all work out." So, man, my delinquency rates dropped. My boss, now he didn't like it, but legally, if I could get him to give us anything, the law allowed us to take it. So the delinquency rate was dropping down. I want to talk to that nice religious boy. He would get these calls. But at the same time that I had met this girl named Judy, well, we had gotten together just before I got saved. So I got saved. I'm radically changed. And I shared with her a little bit. And she said, "Well, I'm never going to marry a preacher." I never mentioned I was going to be a preacher, but I'm never going to marry a preacher.
Wow.
So I'm at work one day, and God talks to me. He goes, "If you marry her, you'll never serve me." Literally.
Wow.
So I got up right then and told my boss, and I said, "Hey, I got to go take care of some personal business." So I went over to her house. I said, "Listen," now we were engaged at this point.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, we were engaged. I said, "We can't get married." "What?" I said, "I'm going to be a preacher. God's called me to be a preacher." And he said, if I married you, I'd never serve God, and God means more than you do.
Just like that.
Yeah.
Knowing you, Dad, that's exactly how you said it.
I'm socially awkward, remember?
Yeah.
And so she lets out this shriek.
Oh, wow.
And says, Daddy.
Oh, no.
Well, I'm there talking to her, and he blocking the doorway. I thought my life was over. She gets up and runs over. He's just yelling, and okay. And so she takes off her ring like this and throws it at me, and I catch it, and I sneak on by. And so I get in my car and I drive off. So, this is done, right? So I go to work, and I'm feeling like I did the right thing. I got saved in February. This would have been May or June, because in April, my mom and dad take us to Las Vegas, Judy and I.
Oh, okay.
My parents are not saved, so they take us to Vegas on my birthday, April 17th. So we go to Vegas. They get us a hotel room. They got a hotel.
Yeah. Is this your 21st birthday?
21st
Is this
birthday.
what? Yeah. I was thinking Vegas
21st birthday. So then, this is Vegas. Walking along, but I'm feeling really uncomfortable because I'm saved. I've been reading my Bible, and I'm walking along outside the circus room. There's this black guy, and he's got about maybe 8 or 10 people around him, and he's preaching.
Okay.
The gospel. And Judy's with me, and I walk up there and I stop. And she goes, what are you doing? I said, I want to hear him. She goes, I don't want to hear him. Well, then you go back to the room. So she gets really mad. So she turns and goes back to the hotel room. And I'm sitting there, and he preaches the gospel, and people start scattering. Some get saved. Then he walks up to me and he goes, have you ever been filled with the Holy Ghost? And I said, no. And so he shows me, and I go, well, I want that. So right there on the sidewalk outside, he lays his hands on me, and I speak a couple words in tongues, and he begins to pray for me. And on the way back,
So when you say on the way back, are you now?
I'm walking back to the hotel room.
No, but I'm just saying, because you're alluding to things, because I know you're trying to be couth because I'm your daughter and stuff. But do you mean that all of a sudden what you're actually living is this has to stop?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I had pretty well backed off relations with her.
Yeah.
Okay. Pretty much. So I'm walking back to the hotel. I walk in the hotel room. She's stewing.
I would imagine.
Oh, I said, can you sit over here? So she sits at the table, the chair. I take the bed, and I take the comforter, fold it up, lay it down beside the bed, take one of the pillows, and I put it there. And I said, I'm sleeping here. You're sleeping there. She goes, what are you talking about? I said, it's bad. It's wrong. I just know it. And I'm going to live for God. That led to the issue with her telling me, I'm never going to marry a preacher. You see, I kind of got ahead of the story.
No,
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that was in April. So it was really tough. But this was about May or June. It wasn't very long after that God told me, you just cannot.
You got to cut it off. Yeah.
By 1st of July, right around there, I'm telling Stoner, man, he's not saved, but he's listening.
Yeah.
I said, I got to have a wife. So I'm praying for a wife. And that's when your mom comes in.
So for our listeners, I know the story, but tell real quick, when mom walks in the door, what do you say to your buddy Stone?
I said, see that girl? I'm going to marry that girl. He goes, you don't even know her. I go, by the end of the day, I'm going to know her. I didn't know that she was there that day to interview for the job. And so the kitchen kind of sets itself up where you look at one end and it comes into the back of the restaurant. Yeah. So she walks in there. I dash right over there. I go, hi. She goes, hello. I said, my name's Michael. What's your name? She goes, Yolanda. I go, Yolanda. Okay. She's got the story, the whole thing. But I just remember saying, I'd like to get to know you. She goes, are you going to come back? I go, yeah, I'm going to be back here. Well, one thing led to another, and I didn't come back that night.
Oh.
But the next day, I went and apologized. I said, I'm sorry. I should have been here, and I didn't. And her side of that is that right there marked me as respectful, courteous, and piqued her interest in the issue. And from that point on, it was just, that would have been August
of 73.
September 14th of 73,
wait.
Got engaged.
You said August
19th, 30 days.
And in September when?
14th.
30 days.
Within 30 days.
You asked her to marry you?
Yeah. Well, assumed that we were going to marry. We were talking about our kids, and she said, "Is that a proposal?" I said, "Yeah." And so
she proposed to you underhandedly. We'll just go with that story. She's not going to listen to it.
We were at the Pomona Fair, which is why we have been trying to go there most every year. And I'd already talked to my mom and dad. I said, I met the girl I'm going to marry. And so I had a ring.
Wow.
And she met my dad, and my dad just fell in love with her, and because her parents were overseas.
Yeah. So real quick, when you got saved, what was your parents' reaction?
Well, when I got saved, the first thing I did, I went and told my mom and dad.
Yeah.
And I said, Mom, Dad. And I shared this whole thing. My dad goes, Laura, I don't know exactly what he's got, but you and I need it. We're going to church. So they went right to church with me. So
it was so radical from them seeing you in your house to this person.
Yes.
Your dad was like, I need that.
Yes. And he quit smoking, quit drinking. Him and my mom started going to church. What
about your brother? I know your sister was already going. Did he ever?
Well, my sister was already going. My brother, what happened was my brother started getting involved in real estate. And he met Sandy, his wife, before I met Yola. So they got married in February.
They would have been young.
Yeah, they were pretty young. So they moved up north.
So they were kind of removed from...
Yeah, they went up north, California.
And that's where her family was, right?
I'm not sure whether it was her family. I don't really recall that.
Your youngest brother, did he go with my parents? Because he would have been in...
Yeah, and he started living with us. And he got radically saved. They used to call him Nazareth because he was in school. And he witnessed to anybody and everybody. So he got radically saved. And so my sister is saved. My younger brother's saved. My parents are saved. We're going to church, telling everybody. And we ended up going to Calvary Chapel on a regular basis. And that's where I really got into music. One of the guys, Gary Harworth, knew a guy, Jack Hagerize, on the radio. So he asked us to start playing music. So I started playing guitar. Yola started singing for the radio. You've seen that picture of the four of us. We were an opening act for some of the top names in Christian music.
Yeah.
And we did a little bit of recording, nothing big name, because we weren't really looking for that. And then I've written Christian songs that some of them are still circulating. And at that time, you don't really think about it. You know what I mean? You just do it. So we're just playing music and singing, old stuff.
So I know there's so much more to the story, obviously, after salvation, but this is mainly about salvation. Just a quick recap. You got saved. What year was it that you?
1973. February.
So February of 73, and then...
Married in June of 74.
You were born in 52, April of 52, and then you got saved. You were just
shy of 21.
Just shy of 21. And that has been now 51 years, coming up on 52 years, right? In February.
Yeah.
Will be 52 years that you've been saved.
Right.
And in that time, obviously, I'm the oldest. I have two younger brothers. So you had 3 children. You've pioneered, you've pastored, you've evangelized, 2 missionary works, one in Kenya, one in Nepal. I know you went to San Quentin prison. You guys did prison ministries. You did all of that. Would you say that God answered your prayers there?
He's met every dream way beyond any dream I could possibly have had.
Yeah.
And along the way, I still got my doctorate, which was part of a dream. I didn't do it for any other reason, but that it was a goal from when I was a kid.
Yeah.
It just was something I did. But your mom really pushed me to do it because I let it slide.
Yeah.
But all the things we did, God led us. And, I never once, we didn't have this huge plan.
Yeah.
It was, let's just do what God wants us to do. Let's just do the will of God. And so we were on radio. We were pioneering. We wanted kids, we wanted a family. Honestly, we had a couple of years where we had it really rough about it, and you helped us work through that. I don't want to go into that here so much, but God restored, renewed.
Definitely.
I don't know how to explain other than that. It's just, and when you summarize like that, I think, who is that guy? Because we don't think like that. I don't think like that. It's not like a list of stuff. It's just something that happened.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, though. Obviously, you have your intellect, your academic talent, and your athletic talent. But I think in this aspect, in the perspective of ministry, it helps you relate. I've watched you, obviously, you've been my dad my whole life. I've never had another dad.
Yeah.
But just watching you be able to relate to an intellectual person, then yet turn around and go play ball with the guys or relate with music. So all of these things that God put in you that probably as a kid, you're like, why? You know what I mean? It's a lot.
Yeah.
But it served you so well.
I have no regrets where he led me. Let's put it that way. Some people may, I wished I would. I honestly, I have no regrets about it. We've had adventures. We've gone places. We've done things. And I've often marveled at the experiences your mom and I have had that helped us through 5 or 6 churches and overseas and this and that. We've been able to help a lot of people and identify with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And even in the church I'm in now, I'm seeing drug addicts coming in, and I was able to relate immediately. I said, I didn't come out of my mom's shouting hallelujah. And then I started sharing my testimony. The guy grabs me and he goes, I'm so glad you can help me. And I began to pray for him. And you at the time you're going through things like that, you wonder, there's always that issue.
No, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Where you think, why?
Why? Yeah. But when it's over, then later on you go, oh man, the adventures we've had.
Yeah.
And the areas we've been in.
Mm-hmm. Even my own personal things. I mean, being in a really dark place where you're like, I am doing all the right things. Why am I struggling with this mentally? Why am I battling this?
Yes.
Then you fast forward in time, and now I'm sharing with someone, hey, I've been there. I get it. And the light bulb goes on. Okay, God, I didn't like it, but now I get it. I understand. Then you can still appreciate what you've been through.
Right.
If it's going to help. That's why I'm doing this. If it's going to help somebody else.
Well, we remember we're not our own.
Yeah.
Your mom and I have talked. We are ecstatically happy. Even with the issues, we're happy. We're contented. We're happy. We're looking for the next chapter maybe God's got for us. It's exciting. I'm 72 years old, but I certainly don't feel like I'm 72.
Well, you don't look like it.
And people don't believe that. But so what? Her and I, this is what we're doing. And I'm proud of, not pride, but.
Oh, you're proud of what God's been able to do.
Yeah.
With that little kid.
I can tell you, every church we had, their converts.
Yeah.
CMA, Christian Motorcycle Association, started with a lady I witnessed to.
Wow.
And her and her husband were bikers in a restaurant in Corona, California. She was a waitress, a witness. She gets saved. And boom, a church came out of that. Missionary to China's came out of that. These are the kind of things you don't know until later.
Small decisions.
You just don't know the impact of your life.
No, absolutely. I think that's a perfect place to stop. I wish I could write a book about all your adventures. There's a billion of them. Some I was a part of, some I wasn't. But it's true, you never know the impact of those small decisions and just being, like you said, willing to live as if your life is not your own.
Yeah.
It's not our own.
Yeah.
So, I want to say thank you for taking the time. I know you thought we couldn't fill up an hour of recording time, but we are at an hour of recording time. You did talk really well, but I want to say thank you to each and every one of you still listening. Without a listener, this story can't be heard. Lastly, if you are not a Christian or were but have turned away and you want this for yourself, it's possible. John 3:16 says God sent his only son, Jesus, to pay the price for our sin. A simple prayer is just the beginning. Acknowledge your sin, recognize Jesus paid the price on the cross for that sin, sincerely ask him to forgive you, and he will. If you enjoyed this episode or any previous episode, please share it with someone. Don't underestimate the power of a transformed life. Until next time, this is Rachel Heinberg, and you've been listening to Not the Same.